So the city of Issaquah basically undertook a gigantic effort to redo their comprehensive plan for the entire 900-acre valley floor. And they had a task force that they entrusted with this mission to come up with what should Issaquah look like, 30, 40 years from now. And that group met, and one of the first things that they ran into is that Issaquah has grown under suburban building codes my entire life, frankly. And the way that those codes work is that as more people come, you just add more. You just keep going more and more and more, and you end up with sprawl.
The last couple of years, we have awakened to the fact that, and this is especially true with the younger generation, is that people today don't want the same things I wanted. They don't necessarily want a house on a third or a half-acre lot with grass and gardens. People today, especially younger people, don't want to have to paint the house. They'd rather go to Italy. It's a whole different lifestyle. Then on the opposite end, the people who become empty nesters, and especially in this community, which you're going to find out here shortly from a demographic standpoint, their kids have left, they're empty nesters, and the normal thinking around here is, gee, why don't we sell our house and we'll move to Bellevue and buy a condo? Well, that's a big, huge loss to the city of Issaquah. And one of the things we have awakened to is that if we're going to have residential down here on the valley floor, we need to have a reason for people to want to live here. And right now, it's a little bit tough to even think about living next to I-90 or the SR 900 road. And there are various areas on our property that suffice more than others, but still, we need to have a complete range of things for people to do. We compete now very much with Kirkland and Redmond and Bellevue and Juanita area. And the Bellevue competition is going to be coming more and more from the Bell Red corridor, not from the downtown Bellevue area. So everybody has awakened to there are some issues. One of the biggest issues we have is our mobility. We are going to have a much more difficult time getting into even Bellevue, let alone Seattle, than what we have today. So we need to become a lot more self-sufficient than we have in the past. We are going to need to provide the goods and services that Bellevue or Seattle have been providing to us. And we need to plan it and figure out how to do it and do it with certainty so that we don't have these big, huge ups and downs. The economy is always going to give us one of these.
In Issaquah, we have a water table that, at least in this area, is only, in some places, 2 feet down, and in some places, 10 feet down.
It's about 6 feet under your feet, right?
Underbuilding parking is not feasible on the valley floor in Issaquah. So if we're going to become the livable, walkable community that we understand our citizens want us to become, we cannot continue to surround our buildings with seas of parking. 75% of the valley floor right now is parking. An incredibly passive use, and we have a huge opportunity. We're going to have to put that parking in buildings and structures, and that is significantly more expensive.
We're getting numbers from anywhere from $20,000 to $25,000 a stall. So if you needed to build, say it's 20,000, you wanted to build 200 of them, that's $4 million. And those parking stalls in our area right now would not generate 1 penny of income. We have to give them free for a while. We might be able to get some of the companies that will locate in our office buildings to give us money for parking for their employees, but forget all that. We have to assume that we have a $4 million investment that isn't going to generate 1 penny worth of income. Well, we've got to start being kind of cute to figure out how we're going to get that done. And so what we can envision is maybe half of the need of those parking garages get built at the time one building gets built, and the second half gets built on the second building or the third building. But in the meantime, we're going to have a little bit of on-grade parking out there to make it work. So we need flexibility.
You've got to have increased densities, which will drive taller buildings, basically. And initially, when you hear about tall buildings in Issaquah, I know a lot of people have an emotional reaction and go, but if you do it right and basically use what's called form-based code, and that is that you're allowed a certain amount of square footage on your property. You can put it on your property however your zoning codes state. And right now, they state that you can't build more than a 4-story building in this area. So what you end up with are big, massive buildings. They're kind of like big bricks. With form-based code, you have the ability to go up, but as you go up, the floor plate of your building squeezes in. It goes on a diet, and higher up you go, the narrower your building is, so you end up with pencils. And the beauty of that is that when you use that kind of a design, you can still see the green hillsides between the buildings when you set them up in the right way, so that you don't lose that connection to nature that is so important to the identity of our community. If we stick with the bricks, you lose that, especially from the pedestrian perspective, because you just can't see around it. So there are reasons why you might consider going up higher as long as it's managed well.
You can't study 900 acres in one fell swoop.
Okay.
Yeah, we
So there
can
will be
see.
sections where it will be allowed. There'll be other sections where the buildings will be lower.
And here that even though higher heights might be allowed, it is never our intention to build all our buildings at the same height. And higher buildings right now, frankly, in Issaquah are not feasible. The market has to take time to work toward it. And again, you know how we build with one building at a time.
Right.
Issaquah can only absorb so much space so fast, and it's a fraction of what the surrounding communities absorb. So we're talking about something that's going to happen over the course of 30 years. And when in the 30 years, I'm not sure, but 30 years is 30 years.
That's important. That's important to recognize when you're thinking about this. It's not going to happen tomorrow. And that's the usual thing. People have a tendency to believe, oh my God, 2 years from now, this thing's going to be full of buildings. Well, it's not going to be that way. But what it will do is give Carrie the flexibility as things come along to be able to design and fit in a logical, economical way to be able to make a really good development. So she should be able to meet the needs of pretty much whatever comes along. That what I've been able to find so far, the biggest concern that people have relayed to me is they're scared of the massing and the height of what this thing would be like because it's going to be different. Try to get over the emotional aspect of it. I had a gentleman the other day tell me that he heard that one of our proposed buildings was going to be 150 feet tall, and he just had a heart attack. Just really created a great deal of emotional consternation for this gentleman. And his wife, which usually happens to men, she looked him in the eye and said, now wait a second, picture what that building would look like. He rides his bike to work every day to Redmond. So he did that and thought, geez, if it was in the right spot, it wouldn't be so bad. It'd be pretty cool. But you have to get over the emotional aspects of what that can mean to you as you talk about it. I might also say before you get started that at least at one time, the tallest building in Issaquah, and you're never going to get this one in a million years, but the tallest building in Issaquah is the Village Theater. And it's because of the fly loft. That fly loft, I think, is 60 feet in the air. We changed a few things around in this town, and we were all very supportive of changing these things around to get the Village Theater built.
Just about SR 900, all this work has been done to upgrade it. How long do we see that kind of capacity with this type of development, that being sufficient, that capacity?
The beauty of what we're planning, because it's mixed use and because it's higher density, is that we've actually done traffic models that show that on full build-out, we actually improve traffic conditions over what they are now. It kind of blows your mind, but that's actually what the end result is. Because you can create a place where people don't have to get in their car for every single transaction that they do. You're probably not going to eliminate cars within the next 30 years. I mean, we are a suburb after all, but hopefully you're not going to need them as much as you have needed them to live in this community.
I think if you haven't recognized already, you should, by living in this town, that Issaquah's transportation problems are not Issaquah people. Issaquah's transportation problems are people from outside our city limits trying to get through our town to get to I-90, or the other way around. So if we can figure out ways to get them to go different routes, we all benefit, and this type of development does that, because it does keep a huge number of trips confined within the project area.